Steve, thanks so much for joining us today. It's great to be with you.
David, thanks for having me. Been looking forward to being on your program.
Yeah, so I've been on lots of sports teams over the course of my life, but I know what that entails. I know what the responsibilities are, the expectations. But I love this name that your organization has is Humanities Team. So what would you say it means to be a part of Humanities Team?
So Humanities Team, you can think of it this way. We're all a part of a family, right? Even if we're not married and don't have kids, there's a family that we're part of. And Humanities Team is simply extending the borders of that family out to the borders of the planet and all of humanity and animal life. So Humanities Team is saying, you mentioned sports teams. We've got these things we love, some basketball and football and dancing and plays and theater, etc. And wonderful. They make our life richer. The most important thing we could be doing today on the planet, and I'm sure your viewers agree, is actually to be stewarding and nurturing our planet, and which includes all of humankind and animal life. So, Humanities Team is just putting out that call of, and by the way, science is affirming this. I know we'll probably get to this as we talk. Albert Einstein said in 1921, the greatest illusion in the world, it is the illusion of separation. Okay, we are not, I know our eyeballs are saying, David, you're clearly over there. I'm here. But quantum physicists, right? Nobel Prize for Physics, 2022, entanglement, 3 researchers. What does entanglement say? Oh my gosh, there's no physical connection, but we're deeply affecting each other. Everything is interrelated, interconnected, and interdependent. So when I say take the fence posts out to include all of the planet, I'm not saying let's do that fictionally. I'm saying this is ultimate reality, right? That everything is deeply affecting each other. We're a part of a one. And I know we'll get to that too. So that's what Humanities Team is about.
Awesome. Thank you. Take us back into your own story. I would love to hear your unfolding of the awakening in your life to consciousness, spirituality, mindfulness. Did you grow up with some sort of faith in your home? Is that part of your background?
I did. Yeah, I grew up in the Catholic Church. So I was an altar boy. And so that was the faith in my home. Now, I will share, David, just like I know a little bit about your past, that did not inform me as I was growing. What was informing me even then in my early years was, I'll call it a felt spirituality. Okay, and what I mean by that is I never got any sense of this judging, punishing deity. I never really, in my personal life, I actually felt just the opposite, David. I felt like, wow, because my family, my parents were divorced. My mother was a legal secretary and worked full time, 7 kids. So we're pretty much on our own. And I just felt this wind at my back, this thing of, this God, I'll use that term, that was supporting me, that was saying, hey, we'll get another job. We'll go to this college. We'll start the career. We'll move to the right location. I got you. I felt that it was this felt spirituality that launched me. And then all of these other kinds of things, consciousness and stillness and meditation, these things all came later. And they're actually natural stepping stones out from this first thing of a God that's really got you, that's supporting you, a wind at your back, where you're realizing that there's a deep connection, again, with each other, with the earth, where the earth isn't just some warehouse. The earth is actually sacred. It's our planet. It's our home.
You know what's so fascinating? I just had a conversation with Marcy Shimoff, who wrote Happy for No Reason.
Right.
And she talks about that the moment she came onto the planet, she felt depressed and down. And it's so fascinating how we all come with this different experience, this different vibe, and that you had this sense that there was a loving God, that the wind is at your back, that all was well, that you were taken care of. I just find that fascinating how we all come, with a different feeling. Talk to me about how that played out in terms of your career, because I know that you went down the path of entrepreneurship and then things began to kind of unfold for you in terms of spirituality. Can you tell us about that?
You bet. Well, I did land in the right place there. Shared of this very modest home. It was 1,300 square feet. Also, pretty small home. And then after I graduated from college there on the East Coast, I moved out to the San Francisco Bay Area, got a series of jobs, including with IBM. And then I left IBM and started my own company, actually with another guy. There were two co-founders. Used furniture, cheapest executive suite we could find in the Bay Area. It was two guys. And boy, were we in the right place at the right time. This was right as the internet was being born. And our business was in digital communications, supporting large enterprises, the Gap and even Apple Computer, Esprit, AAA of California, and other large organizations like that have these campuses all over the world. They were connecting digitally their campuses. So now from IBM and then my partner from his technical background, we knew a little bit more about digital communications than everybody else. Not much. We even knew a little more than IBM, which is saying something there. And so IBM brought us in as their contractor. The manufacturers, Cisco Systems, for people that know digital communications, brought us in, and we grew like crazy, from two guys used furniture and nothing to a $75 million company in 10 years, and then we birthed a consulting company inside of that. That when we sold this first company to NEC out of Japan, we had birthed a second company that we took to 75 million in 2 years. So I really lived what a lot of people call the American dream, and I wasn't in the first row. I was actually up there on the stage living it. Private jets, that whole thing. Now, first I want to say that as people have read, it's not what people think. Okay. It's not the material success. It's not taking you there. That's a longer story that we don't have time to get into, but I didn't find it there. I did find it through spirituality and just awakening, and then what we call the conscious journey and humanities team. And as you know, I left Silicon Valley because that calling became so substantial that I realized I was playing a kid's game, just starting these companies and growing them for shareholders. And, great that I'm creating financial wealth. But with what was going on in the world, even in the 90s, and with my awareness of how the world works as I was awakening into spirituality, I was like, hey, I was born for something more important than this. And so I did sell everything. Thankfully, I married a woman that would journey with me because most wouldn't, where I said, I went to my wife, Stephanie, and I said, gosh, Stephanie, there's a calling on me. I have to follow this calling, and I don't know if I'll ever have another paycheck in my life, but I have to follow this calling. And she said, let's go. And so off we went, adopted two kids, and then other things that I know we'll talk about.
So at what point in your journey, well, I guess I would want to know what was happening internally. Was there an internal conflict between I'm running a successful business and yet I'm feeling this calling? My guess is a lot of people feel that internal conflict between the safety of the career that I have versus I'm feeling this calling to do something different. What was that internal conversation like for you?
Yeah, so thank you for asking. That's the most important thing, actually, that I call it the still small voice. It's going within. I'll call it even your soul's calling. And David, I think I know a little bit about your past and many people on the conscious journey. And we've actually, this is part of the phase of this where, yes, there's financial success, there's admiration for you, all of these things as we're doing whatever we were doing that's worldly. But as we awaken and see this really sacred world around us, this beautiful planet, including a planet that is sacred itself, we see that this is that we want to serve life actually ahead of ahead of financial gain, that we want to serve other people, that we want to create a healing, health, and well-being. That we want our kids and future generations to enjoy this planet that we've enjoyed. So that was the tension there. And but the calling for me, David, was so substantial that I knew I've got to do this. And what happened is over a period of time, it started in 1995, right in the middle of that whole American dream thing. And over a period of months and years, it became so great that by 2001, 6 years later, I'd sold everything. I'd left the Young Presidents Organization. I moved. I was getting ready to move my family. Everything was changing because I knew I needed to follow that calling. And I'll just say to viewers, boy, this is the thing. As we talk about things here that we're discussing, following that still small voice, even when your family, especially when your family and close friends are saying, "What are you doing? You're burning your lottery ticket. What are you doing? Have you lost your mind?" And we just have to. We don't. They love us, so God bless them. They're not. There's nothing wrong here. They love us, and they're trying to help, but they haven't gone through their own awakening experience yet themselves. So we just have to explain. Hey, I'm being called to something that I think is more important, and that's what I'm going to do.
How did that calling come to you? Was it through speakers or books or meditation? Or I know that it happened over a period of years, but what were some of the ways that it came to you?
So the big awakening experience for me, I mentioned in 1995, there's a book called Conversations with God, book one, that came out in 95, written by Neil Donald Walsh. There's actually a series of books called Conversations with God that are 9 in total. The last one came out in 2017 called Awaken the Species. And it had a huge uh, impact on me. I mentioned earlier, this God at my back. This is the loving God that comes through in this series of, you're my daughter, my son, that everything is source energy, or you could even call it God energy, that you are that, and that you were born into this world to, to be your highest expression. And again, in the 90s, there were huge challenges, not quite as substantial as today. But and then it reaffirmed this whole thing that I'm on. My life is a special thing, that it actually, I don't have just one life. As we know, this is part of this spirituality. As we live into our higher self, we understand it's a small game to live just for this one life. The longer game is the one where we understand that we've had many lives. And so the question becomes, what's my highest expression in this life? What is my highest expression? And we don't need to go and be perfect. Think we're going to go walk on water. Right? We don't need to do that to ourselves, because we'll push it away if we think it's that kind of perfection. But what I've found is all we need to do is just do our best. Every day, get up and just that inspiration, feel into it, and the gratitude that we're doing this good work, and that we're supporting others. We're opening our heart. We're in service, and we just do our best. And we can sleep really well at night and feel really good about our life if we just do our best.
Yeah. In your book, A New Universal Dream, the subtitle is My Journey from Silicon Valley to a Life in Service to Humanity. One of the things that I was struck by was the passing of your sister. And I know that a lot of times the awakening that you're talking about, that sense of calling, one of the things that it seems the universe uses to help us awaken is pain, is loss, that somehow, wakes us up from this slumber. Can you talk to us a little bit about, maybe even retell that story, if you don't mind, from the book? Obviously, it's from your life, not from the book, about how that unfolded for you and how her passing impacted your outlook on life and even your priorities.
I'd be happy to. Yeah. So this was an important lesson in my life. And of course, the things that happen to us happen for a reason that's positive, actually. And that when we go through pain and challenge, this is what part of what can help get us through is there's some real gain. No pain, no gain, they say, right? So at this time in my life, this is early in my Silicon Valley career, I was, grew up very self-reliant, as I mentioned. And so I would really give it my all in my career. And this is what I was doing, often working into weekends and things. And so my sister Maureen called, as you mentioned, and she said, "Steve, I'm getting married. Would you come to my wedding?" And I said, "Well, Maureen, boy, I'm working a lot of weekends these days, and uh, I'm not 100% sure whether I can come to your wedding. Can I think about it and get back to you?" And of course, she sounded you know, your sister, she's not very happy. It's like, oh my gosh, you know. Now that night, I had one of the most real dreams of my whole life, that she died. And it was so real. It was one of those things. We all probably had a handful of these kinds of dreams, and I just thought, oh my God, did Maureen die? And I couldn't wait to wake up in the morning and call her the first thing in the morning. And I said, and she answered the phone. I said, whew, Maureen, I wouldn't miss your wedding for anything in the world. I am so there. And of course, I went to her wedding, and we took these beautiful pictures together and had a wonderful time. And that was the last time that I saw Maureen, because she, a few months later, did pass in a car accident. And so, yeah, to say that had impact on me would be an understatement. Had huge impact.
And so as you hear of her passing, like, how do you like assimilate that into your brain, to go, okay, was this a foreshadowing? Was it a lesson? How do you manage something like that?
Yeah, what I got from that, David, and I processed this for a good while through her funeral and beyond, is I mentioned that I'd always felt this wind at my back, this loving God. It was the opposite of what sometimes we grow up with, this belief that, oh boy, well, I better get it right, or there's some real punishment ahead. I didn't have that understanding. And so after this experience, it just times 100, loving God, like, wow, look at what happened here. A massive miracle, this dream that brings me to my senses and helps me to reprioritize life, by the way, which was another thing that happened after this, where now, and after this, and when I was in Silicon Valley, certainly today with my nonprofit, my family or somebody important comes to me, I'm all in. I stop completely what I'm doing. I'm present and really hearing them and really connected to what's going on. So this came out of it as well. But I realized that, this miracle had, I got to be with my sister this last time on this glorious occasion before she passed. And so, yeah, I then, this wind at my back thing was like, I have a really powerful wind at my back. Unreal. And by the way, just to say this, I know you share this too, David. God, if we want to use that term, does not play favorites. Does not play favorites. So it's not, Steve's got some wind at his back. No, what comes through always is everybody is a daughter or son of the Most High.
Mm-hmm.
All have that. Now we have to open to it. We have free will. So, and a lot of my even family members and friends haven't opened to that. And their lives can be quite challenging because they really don't believe that. And we're tuning forks. So if we come down to lower vibrations and don't believe that, and we're a victim and so on, life can be quite challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Where we open to that of, oh my gosh, maybe it's true. I might be, a son or daughter of the Most High, and live into that, where of course you're being supported and guided.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So yeah, that would be another invitation here of, boy, if anybody is watching that isn't living into that, oh my gosh, here's my magic wand, know that it's true. It's true for every single person, nobody left out.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you are that son or daughter, not only are you loved wholeheartedly, but you also have access to all the resources you need.
Yeah,
Which is
right.
wonderful.
Yeah, vision. If you're given the vision, which is the guidance, you're always given the provision, right? They go together. You're never just given vision and then there aren't the resources. Like you say, the resources are there too. They always go together. And sometimes it's very challenging. Don't get me wrong. I've walked through the desert, shards of glass, the whole thing. My life hasn't been just some euphoric thing, but you do always get across. You get supported as you journey.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that this initial book, Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh, was very impactful in your life. I know you went on to develop a working relationship with him. How did you first meet him, and what was your initial interaction and impression?
Yeah, so Neil, back in the 90s, this was when Conversations with God, book 1, 2, 3, and then these others, Communion with God and Friendship with God, etc., started coming out. And he reached out in his newsletter to readers and said, "Hey, is there anybody out there that's running a business that's incorporating these messages of oneness, of a loving God, etc.?" And I thought the whole world was responding yes, because that book was on everybody's nightstand back then. You might remember he was on all the television shows and that. I said, "Yeah, I am, and there's a lot we're doing with it." And surprise, surprise, it turns out there weren't many that wrote in, especially with a bigger business. And Neil said, "Wow, would you be willing to come up to where I live in Ashland, Oregon, and meet me and my wife?" And so Stephanie and I did fly up, and we met him and got to know him. As far as impressions, as he shares, and in fact, as is shared in Conversations with God, book 1, that very first book, he's described as a John the Baptist, a modern day John the Baptist. Okay, John the Baptist, if you may know, was he wasn't like Jesus, but he had a gift of articulation that was off the charts, that could take these complex spiritual truths and then inspire people with them and make them so clear, so real, so tangible that people absolutely want to come on board. And so this is what I could see in Neil, as he is a modern day John the Baptist. He in fact, he says, "Do what I say, not what I do." And boy, he says it in the most astounding way, like no other, really.
Hmm. And so talk to me about the early conversations that you had with him about what would become Humanity's Team. How did that dreaming? I love to go behind the scenes of, you can see what it is now and go, wow, this is amazing what you've been able to create. But those germinating seeds, right, from the early days, what were those conversations like for you guys?
Yeah, they were awesome. So the conversation it was taking this whole spiritual belief system that we're talking about and bringing it out into the world. But let me frame it in a much simpler, maybe more important way. Up until that time, when we talk about the challenges out in the world, we look out our window today. Wow, there's a lot of challenges out there. Now, what philanthropy or nonprofits are focusing on are the symptoms of, but these are important symptoms. We financially support them from my home: homelessness, aid to people in these regions of the world where people need medicine, a roof over their head, food, etc., and on and on. We know the list, right? But there was no nonprofit that was focusing not on the symptoms. Those are symptoms. Symptoms of what? Symptoms of healing that's needed. That's the basic. Even with medicine, we talk about where we're treating symptoms a lot of times with Western medicine, and then holistic treatments that really go to the root cause, right? So this nonprofit, which I formed with some others shortly after we started it, would focus on not the symptoms, but the root cause. So like the first domino. So it was going to go to this whole higher consciousness thing of what, again, science is affirming now, even Nobel Prize for Physics and many scientists today that support this work, and near-death experience and so on, that are saying, really there is this wholeness, this oneness, this universe of source energy that is all sacred, that's all one, that's deeply connected. And once you start living into that, which we call higher consciousness, or you could call it your higher self, once you start living into your higher self where you see this connection, you move those fence posts out, everything changes. You start feeling how delicious it feels. David, I know with your work and where you moved to your podcast, this is the thing is, and we're not doing this out of sacrifice of, oh, I'm sacrificing, or Humanity's Team it's a calling. It's not a career. Yours is a calling, not a career. The calling is that we've opened our heart, we see the connection, we become in service. It feels really good. It feels really good. We are a part of this wholeness, this oneness, this diversity and unity. That's why we keep doing it, because it feels so good. And the beautiful thing is once we get to tipping point, 8 to 10% of the world, they say, right? Malcolm Gladwell, tipping point, then the whole world tips. So that's really what humanities team would focus on. This is what Neil and I, and there were about 20 of us at his home in March of 2003, about 3 months before we launched humanities team 21 years ago. And I turned out to be the one in the room that said, "Hey, I'll work with you." And I helped him launch it. And then 6 months later, he asked me to lead it. And with a team, I've been leading it ever since.
You speak of this term oneness, and for someone who isn't necessarily familiar with that, not just on a physical level, because I'm hearing, okay, remove the fence post or extend the fence post. So it's like, okay, we're all interconnected in a physical way. But could you explain this idea of oneness in simple terms and why that's so? I know that's at the crux of what Humanities Team is all about. So I want to make sure that people really understand that.
Yes. So, and again, I've got so many science quotes I could bring in here because science actually helps get people's legs strong here. Albert Einstein actually was the big one there in the last decades of his life. With people have probably heard he was working on a unified field theory. People have probably heard that term. He didn't quite bring in all the equations that proved that actually on a subatomic level or quantum level. Quantum is atoms and protons and electrons, things that we can't see. On that level, that it actually is a vibrational universe. That we're actually energetic beings. Most people have heard that. Most people have heard vibrational universe. So that means, where we are resonating up here high, we're feeling joy, and where that energy drops low, again, we can feel like a victim, feel pretty lousy. So science actually has been affirming all of what Albert Einstein and even actually Plato and Hippocrates back in 450 BCE, 2,500 years ago, said, there's one consciousness. So this isn't physical bodies now, it's the consciousness as we quiet our minds, as we feel into something, as we're brought that vision, as the provision comes, as we're communing with something. So that's this vibrational universe, this energetic universe. So oneness, and we can actually do that with each other too. We're not only renewing and restoring our connection with God or the universe, also with each other and also with the earth. So that's what the oneness is, inclusive of everything. We're all source energy. So scientists like Nassim Harriman say that we're sovereign to this one body. He uses the science term. So he says, hey, Steve, what that means is the universe cannot be without you. This oneness cannot be without you. We're an integral part of this one, this universe, this cosmos, or the spiritual leaders like Michael Beckwith and Neil Donald Walsh would say, of the divine, of God. So these terms are interchangeable. So it's at that level that we're connected. And again, we can feel that. And that's why we do the work that we do, where we come through our awakening experience. So oneness, or diversity and unity, or wholeness, these are words that are interchangeable. These are pillars of what this whole conscious living thing is. Because as long as we live in just the separation world of we're clearly separate from each other in the earth, we're going to be stuck in this whole, everybody else is getting theirs, I'm going to get mine. Bigger, better. I am going to get mine, and that's why when we look out our window, it's so challenging out there, because when it's, I'm going to get mine, and the earth is just a warehouse, and other people are to be, let me just pay them the very lowest price that I can to maximize my margin. Well, that's what's created that window that we look out today. And so we've got to really understand the science, even ultimate reality, David. So this separation thing, just like Albert Einstein said, greatest illusion in the world, illusion of separation. He said that creates a prison for us, and our job must be to release ourselves from that prison. That's perfect. It is. It's a prison for us, and it's a prison for the world. And it's why, when we talk to people, will you be on humanity's team? Part of this, part of the one already. It's ultimate reality. Will you live into that? Will you awaken? Will you answer the call?
Mm-hmm. In your book, A New Universal Dream, you compare and contrast through your stories the difference between the American dream and a new universal dream. And you're describing it. I love how you talk about, okay, the earth is not just a warehouse, and our role if we're trying to maximize profits from spending, the least amount on labor. Some people are maybe listening going, yeah, but I'm just like, I'm in a job. I don't own a big $75 million company. I just am trying to make a living, trying to be a good person. I do feel drawn to these concepts of spirituality. How would you help them compare and contrast maybe the American dream that we're being sold on media, and maybe our whole life and our culture versus the universal dream that you're proposing? Average person.
Yeah, great question. This is where rubber hits the road out there, right? For people that aren't conscious. Um, so a number of things. Let me just touch on them first. In that life, which I live too, by the way, that was me too. It's very transactional. Okay, where I'm going to do this if you'll do that, and even with your partner, believe it or not, in a marriage, well, I'll do this, but are you going to do yours? It's transactional. Workplace, home, life, hospitals, even go into a hospital where you have to stay overnight. They're certainly trying to do their medical thing, but notice the transactional. Uh, it's painful. Okay. Most of us have lived in the transactional so long that we're numbed by it. And so what I'm saying might even sound like not totally clear, painful, transactional. But if you sit with this and really sit with the work experience in your professional life, with your neighbors, even in your home for many, you'll see, it is pretty transactional, and that's why my marriage isn't so great. And that's why my work isn't so fun. Right. So, what we're talking about once we awaken and we start living into this higher self, this oneness, uh, you can't be transactional. That's part of what the higher self is that Suzanne Giesemann, who's big in this whole transformational space, she says that life stands for love in full expression. Love, and that's what life is invited to be, love in full expression. In our higher self, that's essentially what we're doing. As guys in today's world, in the Western world, we don't walk around sharing love, love, love every day, all day, though we might embody that and express it because that's what is delicious. So that's one. Two, and this could sound out there for people, but Humanities Team is the largest global streaming platform and community for consciousness raising masterclasses and transformational education. Okay, so all of the people that you would know, the Greg Bradens and Bruce Liptons and Michael Beckwiths, all of them have programs, masterclasses on our streaming platform. Also the mediums, also the near-death experience community. Okay, near-death experience community. Dr. Eben Alexander, very esteemed in academic and science circles. This is not some tree-hugging guy, though he may hug trees, but he is very esteemed in academic circles. He wrote Proof of Heaven. He had a near-death experience, and it was so compelling, so powerful, and then what his life has become after that, that he's described this whole non-physical realm where this perfect love exists, and you go through a light tunnel and things that we've probably heard. Okay, what he shares and other near-death experience, all of them almost, mediums who people may or may not trust, all of them almost, is this a perfect love world when we go to the non-physical and leave our physical bodies. One of the first steps as we're going there is something called a life review. They all talk about it. Maybe you've heard the term life review. Okay, life review. What is it? They all share. It's not anything that I'm thinking, saying, or doing. It's what people around me are, how I'm impacting them emotionally from the beginning of my life to the end. I'm looking through their eyes, almost as if it's real, at me. And what were they thinking, feeling, and seeing around me? That's the life review. So remember the Stephen Covey thing? Habit number 2, begin with the end in mind. That's the end. Where how was I treating and working with people around me? So we can do what we have free will. We can, just like you said, average guy in the street of, I don't really know about any of this oneness or higher consciousness or any of that. I'm just trying to get a good paycheck. We can do that. And we can just run over people which is in the higher rungs of this American dream. Um, the lower rungs are perfect because it's equal opportunity, equal education. Oh my gosh, that American dream belongs to the whole world. The higher rungs, when we keep going, are the bigger, better, more. I'm going to get mine. Those higher rungs are just. I don't believe that they find the deliciousness in life, because I did get to live out there with those elites, and I found it wasn't very present. And then, two, at the end of their life, I don't think that life review is going to be beautiful. So my invitation then, just through all the experiences I've had, David, is just to share this and to say, look, if this makes any sense to you at all, if what I'm saying is just pulling a cord anywhere, I just invite you to go within, to your own, I'll call it church, because I don't think people should be operating on what Stephen tells them to do or David tells them to do. They should be operating on their own internal uh, basis, where they're going within and they're to their own guidance, and just go within and feel into these things of, is there a higher self? Could I live into that? Is there a still small voice? What I found, David, for me is, before I shifted over to this other new universal dream that I describe in my book from the American dream, is there was like a little voice that was saying, is Steve, is there more for you? Could you operate with people a little different way? Could you be, less transactional? I ended up, you know from reading my book, I threw away my whole time management system. I'm not telling people they need to do that here at all. But for me, I was so transactional. My time management system, I was like, okay, did you do this and this and this and this? And I had a little voice just telling me that I kept pushing away, saying, well, I'm trying to be a successful entrepreneur. I just kind of pushed it away. But when I stopped pushing it away, threw away my time management system, and then really listened in and started really being with people, that's when my life really took off.
Hmm. One of the things that I found was interesting on your platform is the number of programs that are around the concept of mediumship. And because when I read your vision, I hear your vision, I read your book, there's a lot of connection to the sacredness of the earth and animals that can kind of, in the way our world has structured it, feel a bit more kind of environmental focused. And yet I see a pretty heavy emphasis on mediumship, even in the amount of content that you're putting out. And you've explained it. You're basically, hey, if we can get people, I'm interpreting it as, hey, if we can get people to understand that there's more than this three-dimensional world, and that you're going to have a life review and you're going to look back in time, that can help people awaken. And then once they awaken, then they will be called to live a different, more conscious life.
Yeah, exactly. So Suzanne Giesemann, who I mentioned just a moment ago, you may know her story, David. She was a very senior military officer, flew on Air Force One. She was the assistant to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That's the very highest military person where all the Army, Navy, Marines, everything comes together. She was that assistant, was on Air Force One. And then through a whole series of things that happened to her, she became one of the foremost mediums today in the United States, an evidential medium. Okay, and evidential mediums, when they're talking across the veil to the non-physical realm, they start with evidence of, how do I know it's you? What could you tell me that hasn't been published in papers, but that would prove that it's you that I'm talking to? And it's astounding, really, the success she's had. I've been in our organization, even we've had people that have passed that have then where the person was young and the woman on our team wanted to go talk to her husband, and through Suzanne did so, where the details, of his life with her were so profound that were shared back and forth, that it's incredible. I'll mention one other thing, that's important in mediumship that can help get people's legs strong. We actually created a whole masterclass called Life After Death with Wayne Dyer's kids. Okay, a lot of people know Wayne Dyer had a lot of kids, and I think it was maybe 7, but his 2 youngest daughters are Sage and Serena. Okay, and there's another really incredible medium, Karen Noe, who worked at Hay House where Wayne Dyer was big. And years after he passed, it was 2015, I think he passed, Wayne came to her and said, call my daughter such and such. It was 6 a.m. And Karen says, Wayne, it's 6 a.m. I'm making breakfast. I don't even know your daughter. And he said, and if you know Wayne, even in the afterlife, you still have the same profile, the same kind of, he's got a pretty strong voice. So Karen, call my daughter. So Karen says, okay, calls his daughter and has this conversation, and one thing led to the next. And then the whole family gathered shortly thereafter, including Sage and Serena. During that discussion through Karen with their dad, Wayne Dyer, Wayne says to his next youngest daughter, Serena, he says, wow, you're pregnant and due on July 4th. And Serena says, oh, God, I was thinking up until now, I was talking to my dad. I am not pregnant. This is like crazy. I have a 6-month-old. I'm not pregnant. And the whole family's looking at Serena like, wow, you had a glass of wine last night and stuff. And so Serena says, I'll show all of you. I'm going to go get a pregnancy test. I'll show you. Well, she did. And she was due July 4th. Now, I'll just tell you one other thing, because I took you this far into the story. When she was delivering, she had her sister Sage with her. They're real close in the delivery room. Of course, you don't go to social media or anybody when you go to the delivery room, right? The water breaks and boom, you head off to the hospital. They're in the delivery room. Sage's phone rings. She answers, and it's Karen Noe, the medium, saying, Wayne, your dad just wanted to be there as you were delivering your baby. So there were all these stories where I went out and I talked to the family. Tell me about it. Sage, Serena. I never talked to Marceline, though his wife is a part of this too. And it was so astounding, jaw-dropping, that we went and created a masterclass around it called Life After Death, where they share the whole story and where he's actually still active in today's world. So why this is important, though, is if in fact there's a thinning of the veil, as people sometimes refer to it, if we can actually reach across to angels, guides, loved ones that have passed, that's a whole new compass here that we can live by. We're not just alone going up into our head and figuring it out. I mentioned going within and listening to the still small voice. That is a massive compass. But here's another compass now where loved ones, guides, angels actually are available to give you lots of perspective as part of your daily practice. Mm-hmm. So that's why, because it's a really important, valuable tool when we're on what I'm calling the conscious journey.
Mm-hmm. In your book, you outlined 5 practical things that you personally do to support this journey as we're describing it. And I'm just going to read through these real quick and maybe just give me an overview of why you chose these 5. Why are, obviously you probably do lots more things, but these are 5 things that you brought out in the book. One is that you go within daily, prayer, meditation, nature, stillness practice, whatever it might be. And you're obviously encouraging, inviting other people to do this as well. The second, commit to serving life. The third, use the power of your dollar to buy conscious products that support sustainability and flourishing. Number 4, bring your personal and professional relationships into alignment with your soul's unique calling. And then number 5, enjoy the many forms of prosperity that come back to you through this novel approach to your life. And remember that love's expression is the grandest and highest gift. When you outline those 5, if someone chooses to adopt those values, what would be the benefit? Like, talk me into embracing or adopting these values.
The key thing in adopting these values is, whether we want to call it exquisite life or delicious life or wonderful life or whatever description we might want to use, this is what you will come into. Actually in the book, David, because you've read the book, I share of this billionaire who lived in Northern California, who had all the toys, the 737 jet, the 120 antique cars. He owned an NFL football team, the mansion, all the stuff. And he said that it wasn't until he turned 80 that his life came alive. Well, what happened when he turned 80? It was not the toys. At 80, he said, my God, this is when I found this whole serving others and this connection thing. This is when, and then he started something called the Wheelchair Foundation. When we go within, we're all, you got, oh, go start this incredible podcast. Steve got, oh, go, launch Humanity's Team. So he got there later in his life, start the Wheelchair Foundation. Now, wheelchairs are not only give incredible mobility to people, but whole families in the third world are carrying the person around. The whole family is actually harnessed to this incapacity. You give one wheelchair to this person, and they have this freedom and mobility, and the whole family can go back to doing the things that they do. So he delighted in that with his jet, flew around the world with these thousands of wheelchairs, and had other people donate. One of my best friend actually went out on many of these flights and to contribute also and give wheelchairs. And he said, these are the best years of my life, from 80 to he died, I think, 92. Ken Behring was his name. You can actually Google him and see the story. So whether we're poor, medium, or rich, this whole transactional thing, whether it's jets or mansions thing, bigger, better, more, it's thin. It doesn't deliver. Candidly, I don't think, now I'm going back to the science, this whole unified field theory thing. I don't think we're actually made, believe it or not, in our DNA, in our genetics, to just be going after the bigger, better, more, it's mine, and then, the rest of the world around me be damned. I think that it creates actually a tension and a challenge and a pain. And Albert Einstein said a prison. I think it creates all of those things, really. I mean, isn't that interesting that you win the lottery and you've got a gazillion dollars and you're not happy? And probably many people here have even read the books of billionaires that are, many of whom are not very happy. So at the end, it's really about then what are the processes? You laid out the 5 that I put in my book. It started with that first one of our daily practice, right? Where we're stilling the world. For some people, that's actually walking in nature, where it's also very quiet, right? There are different ways to do this. I do it as a daily practice where I just still the world. I go out, I'm on my porch outside or inside when it's cold in the winter, and I just go into this communing state where it's very intentional. We know this part of this whole world is intentional, where we don't get up in the morning to just kind of go do whatever. It's where we're in service. What's my highest calling today, right? These are things. So it's intentional where I'm going into that. And then it's also, I'll use the term metaphysical. Okay. Metaphysical is where it's beyond intentional, and where we see this healing and health and well-being, where even now in David and the work we're doing in this very broadcast, we're sharing processes and ways that people can live that create this whole delicious thing in their home that moves us closer toward tipping point, that hopefully moves us to John F. Kennedy. In the 60s, he had his mission. Let's land a man on Mars and bring him home safely in this decade. Okay, this is our mission moment. We have one planet. We're all on Humanity's Team. There are 8 billion of us and a planet. Let's rise into our higher self and steward and nurture this planet. It's our only planet. And we have kids and grandkids, after all, and future generations. And so even if we won't do it for ourselves, will we answer the call? Will we consider living into this thing that we're describing as so beautiful and delicious anyway? So that's in these 5 practices that you share. It starts with that practice of a daily practice, which is so important and really anchors our day and just anchors us in this communing state, in this connection with goodness state, in this gratefulness state, and in the metaphysical, actually, where we're seeing healing. Even now, I am sure we're creating healing, health, and well-being simply through this conversation.
We've heard you describe the vision of Humanity's Team very, very clearly. Talk to me about the practicality of it. What do you offer to people? They're going to go check out the website. We'll list it obviously in the show notes. What's the website? What can they find there? And I know you have so many resources. Where would you even encourage them to begin?
Yeah, so we are a 501c3 nonprofit too, just so people know. So we don't no shareholders that are saying, more revenue, more profit. Not happening. So in Humanity's team, it's the other way. Our team is like, when can we drop the prices again? So we get even more reach and impact with all these programs all over the world. That's our thing in a nonprofit. So it's with a Y, humanitiesteam.org. And when you go to the site at the top, it has programs, including free programs with the scientists and the spiritual leaders and the embodied practices, Qigong, yoga, all of them. And you can pull down and go through free programs. As well, let me share one of our newest missions projects in Humanity's team was with something called the Divine Collective. Okay, and we're actually just next week releasing this brand new 60-minute free program. And then also on the Humanities team page, you can scroll down. You'll see a woman, Cynthia Love, who's in the middle of this Divine Collective. The Divine Collective is this, what she describes as 144 spirit guides, who includes, like for me, I know Jesus well, who's one a key figure in this, and others, elementals, Mother Mary, etc., that are a part of this whole mission called the Divine Collective, and that's here actually to support the earth right now. So I would say, go check out the free programs, scroll down to this whole Divine Collective area, and Cynthia Love, learn a little bit about it. We're giving away this first book called Choices. We're doing 2 programs a week with her, Monday night and Wednesday night. The Wednesday night is with, we do Divine Reiki. It's not regular Reiki, Divine Reiki. Oh, and get ready. If you come into the Divine Reiki program, it's mind-blowing. So check out Humanity's team. There's a couple of things that you can do, and you'll see lots of things, Global Oneness Summit, all of our hundreds of master classes, lots of things that we're doing, but those are some places to start on the Humanities team site.
And the Humanities Stream is the streaming platform that you have, which there's either an annual or a monthly fee, but you get access to even more, it sounds like.
Exactly. Yeah. So the Monday and Wednesday live programs all year long, the free book, and then the hundreds of master classes with all the scientists and the spiritual leaders, embodied practices, conscious business, all of these things. You get access to all of that for the $2.99 a year or the $29.99 a month. And you support, when you pay for your own subscription that's, we think, economical, at least here in the United States, we have a 1-for-1 program. So you launch a free program for somebody in usually typically outside of the United States that are also on the conscious journey. They don't have $2.99 or $29.99.
Great. All right. So humanitiesteam.org. We'll put that link in the show notes. If people want to learn about you, your website, stevefarrell.org. And of course, we'll link to your book, A New Universal Dream, on Amazon. So, Steve, thank you so much for all that you're doing. I just love it. And one thing that I want to point out, which I think is just amazing that I've heard in other interviews that you've done, you're the only person I have ever heard to use the word delicious to describe anything other than an apple. I mean, I love it. I'm like, this guy is describing life as delicious. I mean, that really came in, and I'm like, do I think life is delicious? If I don't, I should think about that. So I love that. So fun. So thank you for all that you're doing in the world, Steve. Really appreciate it. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, David, thank you for having me, and thank you for your good work. I love what you're doing, where you're giving voice to so many incredible leaders, including many who aren't well known all over the world. So Godspeed to you.